as Natasha Clark reminded us, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is faced with some rather tricky decisions. Under her reading, the world has changed since her budget last October, when it looked as though £9.9 billion was available, according to the Office of Budgetary Responsibility, and that would be a guard against her self-imposed borrowing rules. The latest forecast finds that is likely to disappear because of global factors such as trade tariffs, which we'll talk about later in this segment of the programme, as well as higher inflation and borrowing costs in the UK. Again, reflection of international trends. Dale Vince, as you know, is an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, also a Labour supporter and a Labour donor. And as a wealthy man, Dale, perhaps an unlikely exponent of a wealth tax.
Yeah, that's true. I'm an unlikely campaigner for a number of things. Like, I'm a donor that thinks we should end donations to our political system. But you're absolutely right. I think that our tax system is currently unjust. We tax people with jobs, people that earn their money with a pair of hands, at a much higher rate than we tax people that earn money with money. And I think we could change that and raise incredible sums of money and have more fairness in our tax system.
And this as an alternative to the welfare cuts that we are expecting Rachel Reeves, or certainly to the spending cuts that we are expecting Rachel Reeves to announce shortly.
Yeah, and they may include welfare cuts, and these kinds of cuts generally anyway always fall on the people that have the least. And so that's where great harm is done. And what I'm arguing for today is for Rachel to have another look at the idea of a wealth tax. Just 2% on wealth over £10 million will only affect 20,000 people in our country, but raise £24 billion a year, which is an incredible sum of money. We can pay for so many more things other than this 9.9 billion gap. We can fund, so many of the things we need in our country this way, and it would just add a little bit of fairness to our tax system.
You don't need me to run you through some of the traditional objections to this. Everyone will leave. All of the rich. I mean, you might be happy to have some of your wealth taxed in this way, but everyone else will be on the first plane to Dubai.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, is it? Look, Britain is a great place to live. People live here for a reason, and it's not just for low taxes. We're talking 2% on wealth over 10 million. We're talking about 200 grand for somebody that's holding 10 million quid. I mean, it's not the end of the world. And honestly, I think there's a moral issue here as well. If we say we're only prepared to tax people that can't leave, there's something wrong.
When you raise these points with Labour politicians, what objections do they have? What reasons do they give for this being unworkable or unlikely?
I haven't actually had a direct conversation about that. It's just something that I campaign for. But I think it's the stuff that you mentioned, James, the usual things, basically, that people will leave. And I think off the back of Rachel's budget last autumn, we saw reports of people leaving. And in the end, it was a tiny percentage, something like 0.3 or 0.03% of millionaires in our country left the country. Too tiny to worry about, and I think that the kind of people that don't want to pay tax here, I say we won't miss them if they do leave.
And yet you know how this will be typified in most of the UK media. In fact, you know how anybody who challenges the status quo generally gets treated in most of the right-leaning UK media. And I wonder if you could update us. I know that you had successfully taken action against the Daily Mail, against Associated Newspapers Limited. You settled a libel claim with them over erroneous allegations that you had supported Hamas. And I know you were taking action against the Guido Fawkes website as well. How's that getting on?
Well, last week, I think it was on the Monday, we settled for the second time with the Daily Mail because they only went out and repeated the libel, having promised not to. That should have been an easy thing, but we had to take them to court to get that far. And then I think it was the Wednesday when the judge read the decision on Guido Fawkes, which took away, this was a preliminary hearing, it took away his chance of defending at a full hearing, and he pulled out, he settled. And the current score in what I've, for fun, call Hamaske, the current score is 7-0, right? Daily Mail twice, 3 Tory MPs, 1 peer, GB News, and Guido Fawkes. And left standing, we've got Richard Tice, and we'll see where that goes now.
And on the Guido Fawkes one, of course, that's not the real name of the man that set it up. Paul Staines, the founding editor, estimated to be paying your legal costs as well. One newspaper suggests might be as much as £100,000. Damages just shy of £10,000. I was advised that you couldn't sue him for libel because of the way that his own assets were arranged.
Yeah, and that was his belief as well. He'd boasted about being basically immune from British law, able to say and do what he liked. And he has, I think, abused a lot of people in public life and has ignored court orders in the past. What we did was to use a piece of media law that the Premier League uses to shut down illegal streaming of Premier League games in order to make sure that when we won the argument in court, we wouldn't be relying on him to take down the content. We're to get a court order against his internet service provider. And that provoked him to actually defend the claim, which I think might have been the first time he's ever done it in British courts, and now to have lost. So it's a fundamental blow, I think, for freedom, actually, freedom of people from abuse by the media, which is what was happening in this case.
Albeit it's a bit of a tin pot media organisation, as you remind us. You've also gone after much bigger beasts like the Mail. But this would be as nothing. I mean, if your wealth tax campaign were to gather momentum, then this would be peanuts compared to what they'd come after you with in the event of the owners of the Daily Mail, for example, thinking that they were going to be required to hand over a percentage, albeit a tiny percentage, of their wealth. You're not cowed by these sort of fights, are you?
No, I'm not. And as long as they keep it honest, then I don't mind. They can have their opinions. I'm not sure if the owners of the Daily Mail are actually tax resident in our country anyway.
That's something else Rachel Reeves was supposed to be looking at. Dale, what's the next stage of this campaign then? Now that you've shared it with us, you've explained it to us, what do you do next?
Well, we're about to appeal part of the ruling from last week in the Richard Tice case, and we've got that outstanding.
No, I'm thinking more. I'm thinking more of the wealth tax campaign. What would be the next phase of that? Sorry.
That's okay. I'm part of a group called Patriotic Millionaires UK as well, and this is a group of wealthy people that are arguing for the same thing. And I think all we can do really is just to continue to campaign. It makes great sense. It would raise vast sums of money and affect just 20,000 people out of 60 million. I mean, it's almost illogical to refuse to do this, in my view.
As opposed to taking something from people who have the least. Dale Vince, thank you. Founder of Ecotricity, of course, Labour Party donor and member of Patriotic Millionaires. That's an interesting title, isn't it? Always a pleasure. And congratulations on your latest legal victories. I look forward to the next ones.